Do you ever have a moment where you realize that trust itself has become a weapon? Where the people you're supposed to be safe around have exploited that safety in ways you never imagined? I had that moment, and it came from the most innocent-seeming thing, a baby monitor. Just a small electronic device designed to help parents keep an eye on their sleeping children, except that's not what it was being used for at all. My name is Emma, and I was working as a live-in nanny for a family in suburban Chicago. The family was the Hendersons. Robert and Jennifer Henderson had 2 children, a 5-year-old named Sophie and a 2-year-old named Michael. I had been working for them for about 8 months. I lived in a small guest room in their house. It came with the job. Most nannies who work live-in arrangements have their own space. It's understood. You need somewhere to sleep, somewhere to decompress, somewhere that's yours. The room was nice. It had its own bathroom. It had a window that faced the backyard. It had a queen-sized bed and a dresser and a small desk where I could grade papers from the online college courses I was taking in my spare time. The room felt safe. It felt like a refuge from the chaos of taking care of 2 young children all day. I locked my door at night, not because I was worried about anything specific, but because it's normal to lock your bedroom door when you live with other people. It's a basic boundary. Robert Henderson was a software engineer. He worked from home most of the time, which meant he was in the house during the day. Jennifer worked as a marketing executive and she commuted to an office downtown. She was usually gone from about 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening. Robert was pleasant. He was friendly. He seemed like a good father and a good husband. He would sometimes make jokes with me in the kitchen. He would ask how my classes were going. He would thank me for the work I was doing with Sophie and Michael. He seemed like a genuinely nice person. One evening, I was in my room getting ready for bed. I had finished my homework. I had showered. I was lying in bed reading a book. I was wearing pajamas. I was completely covered. I was about to turn off my light when I noticed something odd on my dresser. A small camera. A tiny camera mounted on a small stand. It was pointing toward my bed. I stared at it for a long moment. I couldn't process what I was seeing. I got out of bed and I picked it up. It was a baby monitor camera. One of those devices that lets you watch your child's room remotely, the kind that connects to your phone, the kind that has night vision, the kind that lets you see everything that happens in a room even in complete darkness, and it had been pointed at my bed the entire time I had been living in this house. I felt my entire body go cold. I felt like I was going to vomit. I felt a surge of panic and rage and violation that was almost overwhelming. Someone had put a camera in my bedroom. Someone had been watching me sleep. Someone had been documenting moments of my privacy and vulnerability. I immediately went downstairs to the kitchen where Robert was getting a glass of water. I held up the camera. I asked him what this was doing in my room. I asked him why he had installed a hidden camera pointed at my bed. His face went completely pale. He stared at the camera and he stared at me, and he said nothing for a long moment. And then he said something that was almost worse than the violation itself. He said, "You're not supposed to find that." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "It's not what you think." But, "You're not supposed to find that." Like the problem wasn't that he had violated my privacy. The problem was that I had discovered the violation. Like his mistake wasn't installing the camera. His mistake was putting it somewhere that I could find it. I called the police. I called them from my bedroom while Robert was downstairs with Jennifer, who had come home right after I confronted him. The police arrived within 30 minutes. 2 officers came to the house and they took me into a separate room and they asked me to explain what had happened. I showed them the camera. I told them where I had found it. I told them how long I had been living in the house. The officers were clearly disturbed. They documented the camera as evidence. They interviewed Robert. They asked him why he had installed the camera. He said that he was concerned about security, that he wanted to monitor all the rooms in the house to make sure that nothing was being stolen, that the nanny's room was just part of the house, and he wanted to make sure it was secure. It was a lie. It was obviously a lie. A security camera wouldn't be pointed at my bed. A security camera would be pointed at the window or the door. A security camera would monitor access to the room, not someone sleeping in the room. The officers asked Robert if he had actually been watching the footage. Robert didn't answer immediately, and then he said that yes, he had been watching the footage. He said that he had access to it on his phone. He said that he liked to check on all the rooms in his house while he was working. He said that he didn't think there was anything wrong with it because the house was his house, and he had the right to know what was happening in his own home. The officers asked Robert if he had shown the footage to anyone else. Robert said no. They asked if he had saved the footage. Robert said that the system automatically saved footage to a cloud server. The officers told Robert that he was not to delete any footage, that they would be getting a warrant to access the cloud server, that they would be reviewing all the footage that had been saved. I left the house that night. Jennifer drove me to a hotel. She was devastated. She kept apologizing. She kept saying that she had no idea what her husband was doing. She kept saying that she trusted him completely, and he had violated that trust. She asked if I was okay. I wasn't okay. I was traumatized. I was violated. I was trying to process the fact that someone had been watching me sleep for 8 months. The police got a warrant and they accessed Robert's cloud server. What they found was thousands of hours of footage. Footage of me sleeping. Footage of me changing clothes. Footage of me showering. Wait, showering? Yes. The police found that there were cameras installed in my bathroom as well. Tiny cameras hidden in the ventilation shaft. Cameras pointed at the shower. Cameras that had been recording me bathing for 8 months. The police also found footage of Robert, watching the footage himself. There were timestamps showing that Robert had accessed the video feeds multiple times a day. There were screen recordings showing him replaying certain segments over and over. There was evidence that he had been creating compilations of footage and saving them in separate folders. There was evidence that his obsession had been systematic and deliberate. Robert was arrested and charged with voyeurism, invasion of privacy, and wiretapping. The charges carried significant penalties. The police found that Robert had done this before. In his previous job, he had been fired for inappropriate conduct toward a female colleague. No charges had been filed at that time, but the employer had terminated him and given him a neutral reference to avoid further complications. This was a pattern. This was something he had done before, and he would likely do again if given the opportunity. During the trial, Robert's defense was that he had the right to monitor his own home, that installing cameras on his property was not illegal, that he had not shared the footage with anyone else, that his intentions were not sexual. It was a weak defense, and the judge didn't buy it. The judge pointed out that even if you own your home, you don't have the right to violate the privacy of people living in that home, that a live-in employee has a reasonable expectation of privacy in their bedroom and their bathroom, that installing hidden cameras in those spaces is a violation of privacy regardless of intent. Robert was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was also ordered to register as a sex offender. He was ordered to pay me a substantial settlement for the invasion of privacy and the emotional distress caused. But money doesn't undo the violation. Money doesn't erase the knowledge that someone watched me sleep for 8 months. Money doesn't erase the trauma of understanding that I had been violated in my most private moments. I went to therapy. A lot of therapy. I worked through the trauma of understanding that someone I thought was trustworthy had been violating my privacy systematically. I worked through the guilt of wondering if there was something I had done that had triggered this behavior. I worked through the paranoia of not being able to trust anyone in positions of authority in my life. I left childcare work. I couldn't go back to working in other people's homes. I couldn't live in someone else's house knowing that they might have access to my space in ways I couldn't control. I went back to school full-time, and I got a degree in education, and I got a job teaching high school English. It's a job where I go home at the end of the day and I have complete control over my space. It's a job where I don't have to live with people I don't fully trust, but I'm hyper-aware now. I check every room I stay in for cameras. I look for unusual devices. I examine ventilation shafts. I check for tiny holes in walls or ceilings. I'm paranoid about my privacy in ways that most people never have to be. I check the locks on my bedroom door multiple times before bed. I keep my curtains closed at all times. I'm unable to sleep well because part of my mind is always wondering if I'm being watched. Jennifer divorced Robert. She was devastated by what he had done. She blamed herself for not seeing it. She wondered how long he had been doing this. She wondered if he had done this in previous relationships. She wondered if she had missed signs of his behavior. She struggled with the guilt of having brought someone into a home where he could victimize a vulnerable person. Sophie and Michael are in therapy. They're trying to process the fact that their father had violated the privacy of someone they trusted. They're trying to understand what it means that their father is a sex offender. They're dealing with the complexity of loving someone while also understanding that person has done terrible things. And Robert is in prison, and eventually he'll be released, and he'll have to register as a sex offender, and he'll have to explain to future employers and future partners what he did and he'll have to live with the knowledge that he violated someone's privacy and destroyed her sense of safety. But I'll also have to live with the knowledge that I trusted someone and they exploited that trust in a way that was profound and systematic. I'll have to live with the knowledge that there are hours and hours of footage of me that exists somewhere, footage that Robert created, footage that was used as evidence in trial, but that might still exist in various forms, footage that might be shared online, footage that is now a permanent part of the digital record of my violation. What I learned from this experience is that trust has to be earned slowly and cautiously, that living in someone else's home means accepting a vulnerability that can be exploited, that people who seem normal and trustworthy can have dark obsessions hidden beneath their friendly exteriors, that violation can happen in the place where you're supposed to feel safest. If you work in someone's home, check your room thoroughly. Look for cameras. Look for unusual devices. Look for anything that seems out of place. If you see something that concerns you, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you discover that your privacy has been violated, report it immediately. Don't worry about being rude. Don't worry about being paranoid. Don't worry about seeming ungrateful. Your safety is more important than politeness. Your privacy is more important than maintaining a relationship with someone who has violated your trust. I still have nightmares about Robert watching me. I still think about him replaying footage of me sleeping. I still feel violated by the knowledge that he had access to the most private moments of my life. And I still check every room I enter for cameras. And I probably always will.